So I know that you've had a lot to do with the Sudbury schools. I believe you have a child who runs a Sudbury school. I'm not sure if he still does. And we hear a lot about Sudbury schools. So I'm sure that some people don't know about what they are. So I was wondering if you could describe that alternative for us.
Sure. I really got interested in this whole set of questions when my own son became a student many, many years ago at a school called the Sudbury Valley School, which is in Massachusetts, in Framingham, Massachusetts. The school was founded in 1968, and it's still going strong after 52 years. And it is a school that is as unlike school as you can imagine. There's no curriculum. There's no testing. Courses are not actually even offered at this school, although if any children want to have a course, they get together, they can form a course, and they can usually talk a staff member into leading it if they want a staff member to lead it. The school accepts children from the age of 4 on through high school age. So this would typically be like pre-kindergarten on through 12th grade if it was divided that way, but they don't think of it that way. You're not in any grade. The children are not segregated by age in any kind of way. So there are lots of opportunities for a wide variety of activities at the school. There's equipment for all kinds of things. There's books all over the place. There are at any given time, the population of the school varies. Right now it's low because of COVID, but population has been as high as 200 students, at which point there were 10 staff members. So, and that's 10 staff members overall. That's all the adults involved. And the staff members don't call themselves teachers because they don't believe they do any more teaching than anybody else at the school. So that's the way the school operates. It's really a democratically run community. The way the school operates administratively is as a functioning democracy. So the decisions for the school are made at the school meeting, where every student, regardless of age and staff member, has one vote. And all the rules of the school are made at the school meeting. The school meeting also elects officers to take care of the administrative thing, and generally those are staff members. And the school has a system, a democratic system comparable to the judicial system in our larger society for dealing with misbehavior. So if somebody's accused of breaking one of the school rules, one of the democratically made school rules, they are brought before the judicial committee, which is basically a jury that's made up of a cross-section of the ages of the students and staff at the school. So that's how the school runs. And the staff, to be a staff member at the school, you have to be elected every year. Staff only have a 1-year term. Nobody has more than a 1-year contract. And so you have to be re-elected to staff every year in an election in which every student and staff member has a vote. That's the way a school operates. So you can well imagine that when this school was first founded, the lawyers just were rolling their eyes continuously. This school can't possibly last. Here it is now 52 years later. It's doing extremely well. There are dozens of schools modeled after the Sudbury Valley School, and these are called Sudbury schools often, and throughout the world. Most of them are pretty small, but there are quite a number of them. And that's the way the school works. And so my first study, the way I got into this whole area was when my son became a student there. To be honest, I was skeptical. I was happy that he was happy there, and we didn't know what to do with him. He was rebelling in public school. He thought it was prison, and he's since convinced me that it is. But at that time I wasn't convinced, and we struggled with him to try to get him to adapt to school, and he just deliberately, from kindergarten on through 4th grade, continuously, deliberately violated the rules as a way of rebelling. And until the school didn't want him anymore, and we had to figure out what to do. And we found the Sudbury Valley School, and he said, this is what a school should be. The twinkle came back in his eyes. He became the kid I used to know before he had started public school. He was clearly learning, he was clearly thriving. But I was worried nevertheless. I was worried, you know, he was 10 years old actually when he started. I was worried in all the ways that most parents would be worried about their child doing something so radically different in terms of schooling. Would he, you know, I was a college professor. I believe I'm not the kind of person who would push him into college, but I would want that to be an option for him, right? I mean, what if he wanted to go into some career that requires college? Could he go to college from such a school? There's no tests, there's no grades, there's none of these, there's no courses, there's none of the things that colleges say they require, right? I was worried about that. I also wondered, you know, do they all become artists or musicians? You know, is there any other career that self-directed education could lead you to? So I ended up doing a study of the graduates. At that time, there were already close to 100 graduates. And with the help of a part-time staff member, we found pretty much all of them. And something like 80% of them responded to a long survey. And that study convinced me this school is an effective educational institution. The graduates of the school had gone on to higher education if they wanted to, and many of them did, at least as high a proportion as from traditional schools in the same area. They were well employed. They were essentially all of them happy that they had gone to such a school. They all saw great advantages over having gone to another school. They had come to the school for various reasons, some right from the beginning because they believed in it, some because they'd been failing in public school, some because, like my son, they'd been rebelling in public school and the parents were desperate. What else were they going to do with these kids? You know, it seemed like no matter why they came there, there were some who came with learning disorders, and the learning disorders magically disappeared. You know, dyslexic kids learn to read. I just wrote a blog post on that based on some survey of homeschoolers. Kids with ADHD figured out how to settle down. I mean, the judicial committee brought them in line, right? You know, all these disorders we make up about kids in school, it doesn't seem to matter much. I mean, there are some clear disorders which are real problems, but most of these things that we call disorders in school are not disorders in this setting. So so you can see why I got drawn into this. I mean, here is a school that violates all of what our society thinks is necessary for children to become educated. And yet, by any reasonable definition, these kids were becoming educated. What does it mean to be educated? I define education this way. It's everything that you learn that helps you live a meaningful and satisfying life. And these kids were clearly, these young people, some of them were not so young by the time I did the study, were clearly living meaningful and satisfying lives. They were supporting themselves. They were happy in their jobs. They were happy they had gone to such a school. So they were educated. And so then the question became, well, how did they become educated? I mean, you go to that school and they're not on their own doing anything that looks like school, at least not much. You know, once in a while you can see somebody who's preparing themselves for a college entrance exam. They figure out they've got to take some kind of an exam to get into college, so they'll spend a few weeks preparing for that. But for the most part, when you look at the kids at the school, they're doing just what you think kids would do. They're playing, they're hanging out, they're messing around. You know, if they're reading what they want to read. It doesn't look like they're reading textbooks, and yet they're becoming educated.